Let's get hyped. Welcome into Colorado Week. I am Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Brunch, Brian Christopherson. We are Husker 24/7, and this is a Husker 24/7 HypeCast, which means we have a special guest. None other than 1620 The Zone's Gary Sharp joins us for Nebraska, Colorado. I would venture to guess that Gary has been to the most Nebraska, Colorado games out of everybody in this quartet.
Probably my first Colorado game in person was as a high school student, the Nebraska Colorado game in 90. And then I think between 90 and 2004, I went to every game.
Yeah. It's BC's probably the next closest. If I'm working my way through here, I've only been to 3 now that I think about it.
Jeez.
2
Really?
2 at Boulder and 1 at home. Well, someone has to drive the bus and let you guys throw the spitballs and moon the people on the outside of the bus and just be yourself.
That's fair.
I'm the adult in the room. You got to be the children. That's how it works.
You were you in Boulder in 19 for one of the most deflating moments in Nebraska recent history?
So I was in Boulder in 2009, Boulder in 2019, and then saw Nebraska, Colorado in 2018. I did not go in 2006. I wasn't a student at Nebraska yet. 2008, the game that everybody remembers, I had sold my ticket because it was alumni basketball for Columbus. So I had to. Clearly, being the skilled basketball player that I am, the class of 2006 couldn't have survived and gone 0-4 without me. So, that was a bit of a mistake. I think I would rather have been at the stadium that day.
Hey guys, and this might be the last one for a long time.
Yeah.
Even though Dannon's daughter just graduated from Colorado, and he is really good friends with the AD. Like at the Colorado graduation ceremony at Folsom Field, Troy Dannon watched it from Rick George's office. But this might be the last time before college athletics changes that we get Nebraska, Colorado.
Well, how many years out is Nebraska on their non-conference schedule right now?
Isn't there an Oklahoma State game like in 31, 32?
I was going to say at least 8 years.
They've got an Arizona series in like the 2030s, like late 2030s, I thought, right? Like there's a 3-gamer. Like that's never going to happen, but it's nice to think it might.
Do you guys think
Brennan's still going to be there in the 2030s?
Entirely possible. Sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
A side note on this, do you guys think that the Tennessee, because I really want it to happen, the Tennessee home and home in a couple of years will actually happen?
I don't count. I don't think any of those things are I don't count any of those as being likely, honestly.
I think Nebraska's going to try to get Old Dominion to replace that game.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like it too, but I'm not saying that with inside knowledge. It just feels like that's where the train is moving.
Oh, embrace UNI and Houston Christian.
Well, we don't have to do that today. Today we get to embrace the hate that is flowing through the state this week. There is no Nebraska nice set for Saturday. The Buffaloes come to town with Deion Sanders as head coach, Shedeur Sanders as the quarterback, Shiloh Sanders as the late hit extraordinaire, and Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn. I named just about everybody that is worth naming. They have a couple defensive linemen at Colorado that I think are going to give Nebraska a little bit of a challenge on Saturday as well. But outside of that, it is a very top-heavy Colorado Buffaloes operation, and Nebraska will get to mix it up with them on Saturday. And we will start on offense, as we always do, and we'll start with our special guest, Gary Sharp. We have talked about Dylan Raiola for 3.5 years, and Saturday, we got to see him play his first game as a Nebraska Cornhusker. What did you take away from that performance? Was it better than you expected? Was it worse? I'd be shocked if it was worse than you expected, but I'll allow for, the possibility that you thought he would go perfect for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. What did you make of Dylan Raiola's debut on Saturday?
I thought it was exactly how I thought it would be. He had some flash, but not over the top. He was Nebraska's got a quarterback that plays quarterback, where we've spent time talking about, man, look at his eyes, what he does to the DBs and moves them, his poise. He protected the ball. He had nice touch. I think it was kind of exactly what I figured for the first game against a team that wasn't going to stress him a ton. You couldn't have asked for a better opponent, better outcome. But for a freshman quarterback with all the hype, that's about as good as it gets to have your baseline to start from.
BC, there's going to be a lot of talk going into this Nebraska-Colorado game about how Nebraska can control the trenches, can control things with the running game. What did you see out of Nebraska's running game against UTEP? Where do you sort of feel like things line up at running back, where the four-headed monster gets condensed down to at least one to start the game? Do you have a guess as to what Nebraska does at running back as well? 7 questions in there. Feel free to answer all.
My best guess is they run it back similar to what they did last week, with maybe Rahmir being out there first, but that doesn't mean he necessarily gets the most touches. I still think Emmett Johnson, whenever he gets in the game, you have to say good things happen. But Rahmir, I mean, this is going back 3 years, but he's been a big game back for Nebraska against good defenses. Oklahoma, Michigan State was really good that season, and he performed really well. So this does seem like a setting where he could do a lot of different things for you and feel comfortable in it. So maybe I would bet on Rahmir as like sort of stealing the show just because of that. But that's just off of what I said there. It's nothing more than that. I don't know. It's really interesting. I don't know if you can involve all four necessarily in the first half like you did last week. It feels like the price of poker goes up here, and you got to be a little bit different in how you manage it. But we'll see. Dowdell was good. He was better than I expected. I was not like sure about him leaving the spring. Even the spring game touchdown he had, I thought, oh, that was nice, really well blocked. A lot of guys would have scored, but he ran hard on Saturday. So I think the whole line did well in the first game. And I know we always have to preface everything. I know it's UTEP. However, that's like the most popular words of the week around here. But we've watched Nebraska's running game against teams where we've thought going in, well, they should just line up and get 5 yards a pop, and it hasn't happened. And it felt like even early in that game, it was a little bit of an old school flavor where you were seeing Nebraska get those 4 to 6 yards, and you just knew over the course of time it was just a bunch of body punches that the other side wasn't going to be able to handle. So I thought that was encouraging. So I expect that they can run the ball a little bit in this game. I think they have to. I think it's a huge part of it is kind of keeping the clock on their side, keeping Shedeur over there, and just controlling the trenches and wearing them down into the second half.
Brunch with the qualifier that we know that it's UTEP. What did you make of Nebraska's wide receivers on Saturday, particularly Isaiah Nair, Jamal Banks making their debut with the Huskers?
Well, as you know, it was against UTEP, but I think, they did pretty well. Kind of as you would have expected, right? I mean, you have 2 6'4" veteran wide receivers on the outside. You were hoping that both of those guys would be the reason why Nebraska felt like they would be able to make teams pay for cheating on playing tight against the run. You saw Banks make a great contested catch. Nair made a nice catch and run after the keeping his balance and getting into the end zone. I mean, I think those guys are exactly what you would have hoped. What's interesting to me is they didn't rotate as much when the game was in doubt as much as I maybe expected them to be. I mean, you didn't see a ton of Jalen Lloyd. You saw Ja'Cory Barney out there. I'm curious to see if they do a little bit more of that this week. But, I mean, they knew they needed to add more to that wide receiver group, veteran guys, and I think that really showed up against UTEP. And, this Colorado secondary is pretty good. They obviously have Travis Hunter, who's a top 5 type pick. And, somebody is going to have to make a play who's not being covered by Travis Hunter. So however they decide to play that, the guy that's not being covered there is going to have a heck of a game, I think, and make a couple big plays to kind of keep Nebraska on schedule.
Sticking with Brunts here, what did you – it had been so long since we've watched Nebraska play, and their last game was against Iowa, and it came with, multiple backups on the field and Chubba Purdy at quarterback, and the offense sort of was what it was that day. What did you make of Marcus Satterfield's play calling? How do you think that maybe translates into this next week against Colorado?
Yeah, I think you have to give him credit because I think they stuck with the run, and that doesn't seem like it should be kind of a novel concept. But I think when you kind of have this new shiny toy at quarterback, these big wide receivers, new wide receivers, you have guys that are explosive playmakers. I think you probably have to fight the interest there and maybe seeing what they can do. And I think early on, I thought they played really good complementary football. I mean, they ran the ball right at UTEP. They controlled the clock. They didn't let UTEP get on the field and do the go stuff. And I think he was kind of restrained in his play calling, and I think that was a good thing. I mean, I think he put Dylan Raiola in good situations most of the day. And especially with the way they kind of managed things in that second quarter and, kind of riding the momentum a little bit of after that safety, I thought he did a pretty good job. I mean, I didn't have too many quibbles. And I think the recipe is going to be similar this week where you're going to have to run the ball. You're going to have to stick with the run and, try to control the clock like BC said and keep that Colorado offense on the sidelines as much as you can.
Gary, when it comes to Nebraska being on offense Saturday, do you think it's more about Nebraska taking care of Nebraska or Colorado taking care of Nebraska? What I mean by that is the bigger concern Nebraska being its own enemy or what faces them across on defense for Colorado?
Well, I would say Nebraska being their own enemy. See, I'm Mr. Run the Ball guy on Saturday night. I think they have the opportunity to just run the ball, but not get fancy with it. Just turn around and hand it off. I think they have an advantage in the trenches, and they can validate this talk about being physical on both sides. They can do it definitely on Saturday night. I think I actually think for a while here, this season is about Nebraska doing Nebraska. You're a 5-7 team last year. You're working on yourself. You got to respect the opponent and game plan for that opponent. But there's things that Nebraska needs to work on, and I think Saturday night is one of those things. If Nebraska just does Nebraska things on where they're built to have success, I think they'll be fine. But if Nebraska reverts to old Nebraska and all of a sudden you're a -1, -2 on the turnovers, then you're scrambling. And I also, going back to what Bruncy said about Satterfield, you almost hope that Nebraska doesn't fall behind. And if they do, how does that impact Satterfield with his friggin' surgeon as his quarterback? Does he change? Because I thought for one of the rare times of late, the quarterback and the OC at Nebraska seemed to be in sync. Like they were speaking the same language.
BC, when you look at the performances that Nebraska had on Saturday, is there anybody on offense that you think maybe got off to a slow start that we see rebound against Colorado?
I mean, I think a lot of people, as you ask that question, are probably saying Fedoni just because of his stat line. I don't know. That's kind of a easy answer to grab from the air that I don't know is actually right. The plays that they ran to him, they just weren't well executed. I mean, on the one, I understand it, the 3rd and 2, where it's an east-west screen and you need Banks and Nayor to get a block and nobody got a block and it loses 3 yards. He has really nothing to do with that. That's just a play that should guys get their block, you get 5-6 yards and you move the stick. So hopefully if they do that sort of stuff, the guys on the perimeter do a better job of handling their business. I do think Fedoni, as was said earlier, with Travis Hunter maybe taking away one of the main wide receivers, a guy like him, you would think pops up and maybe gets the middle of the field where he can make some more plays. And I just hope he catches a few like across the middle, a couple passes at least, where we've talked about this, where he's like on the move and we get to see that Thomas Fidone we saw coming up as a prospect and not something behind him or whatever, but just like on the move north-south. And that's, I think, where he's really good. So hopefully he gets a couple of those plays. Maybe a little, if you want to go old school Nebraska, Colorado, where the tight end dominated. 1994 is the ultimate game on the 30-year anniversary. So maybe some of that comes into play.
Let's flip over to defense. We'll stay with BC. What is your confidence level that Nebraska can get after Shedeur Sanders without having to commit extra players? I mean, do you think they can do it with 4? And do you think they could even do it with 3?
Sometimes, yeah. I was not that impressed with Colorado's O-line in the opener. I think I use this play all the time. I've used it during the offseason, the one where Javen Wright almost got there on the 3rd down last year against Shedeur, and they hit the like 40-yard pass against Tommy Hill, who's probably got that in his head, by the way, is like, I got to respond this year. You know, that
debatable if that guy caught that pass, by the way. They never reviewed it. I'm still not entirely sure that was complete. Anyways, continue.
But along with that thought, I think Nebraska is going to hit Shedeur a lot like they did last year. The question is, are they near misses where he's getting the ball out and he's making that play? I think Nebraska is going to win this game on script. I think where it's dangerous is Colorado, I think, has got the type of athletes, like 3 or 4 of them on offense, where if they go off script and have a few things really go their way, it can become dangerous in a hurry. Because, I mean, you watched the game last Thursday against North Dakota State. Shedeur Sanders is not afraid to backtrack like 15 or 20 yards, like it's a video game almost. Is he going to make those few plays when that happens, where it's a 40-yard play down the field where Jimmy Horn suddenly is open because they have to cover so long? Or is it going to be something where it turns into a calamity for them and Nebraska takes advantage of sort of this freelancing that's going on? So I like Nebraska just in the X's and O's, like on the grease board. If it plays out that way, it's those plays where it doesn't that I'm really curious if the Huskers can win on. And I think is Colorado's chance to really equalize or get an advantage.
Gary, acknowledging that it was just UTEP last week, what stood out to you about Nebraska's defensive effort in that game?
Well, if it was anyone other than UTEP, I might have a different opinion. But because it was UTEP, I think Nebraska defensively was, first of all, it's amazing they only faced 50 snaps against an offense that was going to go hyper speed. They also, outside of the one drive where UTEP went way too fast. I mean, that was like, and all of a sudden they're in the end zone. I think Nebraska fundamentally was really good, and they got to play a lot of guys. I mean, it's crazy that Ty Robinson played 21 snaps. That's it. Bayor played, 17 and had 5 tackles? I mean, they were very efficient, and they looked like they had a good camp where their technique was sound, the game plan was sound, tackling wasn't an issue. It was a good start for a defense that I think is going to be the signature of this team, and they're going to be tested even more. Things that we think are a strength, like defensive line, which BC was alluding to, or tackling, or the Tommy Hills of that secondary, that's where they're going to get tested this week. And if you believe that they are good, regardless if it's UTEP or not, then they'll be fine. I was okay with them. I think we would have all been disappointed if UTEP would have scored 21. If they would have scored a couple of touchdowns, big plays, there was none of that. It was like easy breezy for the defense.
Bruns, is there anyone on Saturday that you, just out of the, let's say this, 11 or 12 black shirts Nebraska has given out so far, is there anyone that you're worried about potentially being exposed by what Colorado can do offensively?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a test for the secondary. I don't know that there's just one guy back there. And I think BC's point is a good one where, it's not difficult to imagine a situation where Nebraska gets pressure on Shedeur Sanders and he gets out of the pocket or backtracks or buys time, and you're having to cover wide receivers for 6, 7 seconds, something like that back there. I mean, that's a really tough thing to do, and it's even tougher when it's, guys with the athleticism that Colorado's wide receivers have. So it's a big game for Buford. It's a big game for Tommy Hill. I mean, Tommy Hill earlier in the year, he starts popping up in the first round in NFL mock drafts. I mean, this is a big game for him to show what he can do. So, I think, I'm most not leery, but I think one area of concern a little bit is just how that secondary is going to hold up. Nebraska is going to have to win up front without committing a lot of pressure. And, the guys on the back end of the defense are just going to have to not only cover well, but if they do give up completions, they're going to have to tackle really well too, because they just need to avoid big plays back there. Because that's where you're playing into Colorado's hands. So I think that's probably my biggest concern is just that wide receiver group against Nebraska's secondary. We didn't really get a good sense last week, by the way, against UTEP about the way that they were playing. So, that's still a bit of a mystery to me of where they're actually at.
Speaking of mysteries, do you anticipate Colorado will even attempt to try to keep things honest with a running game, or do they just go 85-90% pass on a day like Saturday?
You asking me?
Yeah, to Brunts.
Yeah.
See, we work our way back. You usually double up if you're on the end.
It's a snake
like a
podcast.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep, there we go.
I got 2 picks here. I think they'll try a little bit. You have to. Just a little window dressing, but I think it's going to be a lot that's going to fall on Sanders, Horn, and Hunter on offense.
Gary, any of the guys that were able to play as Nebraska flooded the bench kind of catch your attention? Maybe not so much for this week against Colorado, but someone that you could see having maybe a larger role or more opportunity this season than you weren't anticipating?
Gosh, a lot of those guys. Like I'm a big Riley Van Poppel fan, and I mean Nebraska has a luxury to have a guy like that as a backup. I will go more of maybe on the not as well known starters on defense, because you wrote about him, and I'm absolutely in agreement. MJ Sherman is in this game very intriguing to me because he looked completely different than the last time we saw him, and he played with confidence and he played with violence. That's another thing. I thought Nebraska offensively and defensively, and even on special teams, there were guys that were playing with violence. Like they were out there to hit, and we haven't necessarily seen that across all 3 phases. So I would go with a guy like MJ Sherman, who probably doesn't get mentioned as much on defense, would be a guy that I would watch in this game. And he's part of a crew that those linebackers are going to have to run, and they're going to have to tackle. And I thought he did a good job in his limited opportunities where he tackled in space, and he was never out of position. And that's what I think, going back to a previous question and an answer, Colorado gets into playground football. I mean, we all played playground football before. It gets helter-skelter. Your best defensive coordinator, which was your neighbor trying to dial up a play for 5th graders, they're out the window when you go playground football. So what does Nebraska do when Colorado gets into a playground mode and they abandon the rush? And it's like, all right, we're just going to have our quarterback go make plays. Are you still sound in your technique? A guy like MJ Sherman in that situation intrigues me. Now, will he be on the field as much with the speed? We don't know, but when he's out there, I'm looking forward to seeing him. He took a big jump in my book.
Yeah, I clearly completely agree. BC, we're going to finish up with some special teams here. Nebraska had an opportunity late in the game against UTEP, as they played UTEP on Saturday, to kick a long field goal. They chose not to. Went for it with Jalen Gramstad. Didn't get it. What is your level of confidence if Nebraska needs to make, say, a 41-yard field goal on Saturday at a critical moment, either right before half or to just get the most out of a possession? Like, where are you at in terms of confidence in Nebraska's place kicking? We've only seen one field goal attempt, and it was made, but it was a very short one.
It would be a situation where I wouldn't want to bet my 2018 Toyota RAV with 120,000 miles now. So it's not
a lot of miles on that.
That's big flex. Big flex.
It's not worth that much as trade value, really. But
now tell people it's electric blue, and that'll help.
Yeah, it is. I thought that was a sweet color when I got it, and then I realized you ever get a vehicle and you realize like everybody's got that same color. You didn't even notice it before, but now you do. But anyway, I wouldn't be willing to bet anything like that or my dogs on him making it. However, I also leave open the idea that I don't know if Tristan's ready to go on those type of kicks or not, or like what John holes look like. But Tristan Alvano is a capable kicker to find it. Like the idea that it's just necessarily going to go bad, or it's going to be 9 out of 15 again this year. I'm not falling in that lane either. Like I'm open to the idea that, he was an unbelievable kicker in high school. He's got good coaching around him from a lot of mentors and stuff. So I hope he's healthy and gets a crack at it, or we'll have an amazing story if John Hole comes in and has to hit a big kick and does, but would I bet stuff on it? No, but I'll be just like sitting up like, oh, let's see what happens.
All right. Prediction time. Picks to click. We will start with BC.
Yeah, I'll say Mekhi Bear. Mekhi Bear gave the most interesting interview of anybody off to the side yesterday. He's fired up for this game. He's confident. He played a great game in the opener. He said, like, on special teams, I'm going to go down there and they have to have 2 guys blocking me. They better know that. He had some quotes like that. It's all on our board. He was fired up. I just think he's gonna ball out and have a good game. I think he's one of those guys who, for reasons that are understood, we weren't talking about quite as much, sort of like MJ Sherman. And there's this crew of guys who, if they raise their game up and they're suddenly like, man, they're really good, it even changes the whole complete. We already thought it was a good defense, but then it's great defense. So I'll say Mekhi Bear.
You guys keep naming players that I thought played really well on Saturday and was excited about for this year, particularly in Mekhi Bear. Gary, who do you got picked to click?
Ty Robinson. I think Nebraska's defensive line, that's with coaching as well. I think that's one of the biggest mismatches advantage Nebraska is Nebraska's defensive line against Colorado's offensive line. My pick is Ty Robinson, and Ty Robinson gets to play the whole game against Colorado. Remember last year he was suspended for the first half.
That's right. Forgot about that. I think that helped lead to a couple Cam Lenhart sacks. So Nebraska was able to get some production.
Man-hand sacks.
Brunts, 2 defensive players taken so far as picks to click. Are you staying on the defensive side of the ball, or are you zagging?
I'll zag. I think I'm going to go Jamal Banks. I feel like he's a guy that you're going to have – this is a game where you're going to have to make some big boy catches. And I think that's why Nebraska went and got him, was this is a guy that was comfortable in traffic. He was comfortable playing against high-level competition. And there's going to need to be, I think, 2 or 3 catches that wide receivers are going to make over the course of the game on 3rd down in the red zone, where you're just going to have to go up and take the ball from somebody. So I'm going to go with Jamal Banks being that guy for Nebraska's offense.
I am going with Tommy Hill as my pick to click. I think he shows up in a big way on Saturday. I'll even throw in a bonus oddly specific prediction. Tommy Hill gets an interception off of Shedeur Sanders on Saturday. I believe in the talent. I believe in the Pro Football Focus numbers. I believe that he'll make a play on Saturday in a key moment. All right. I mentioned oddly specific predictions. I will just go ahead and get mine out of the way, and we will work our way back around. I mentioned the interception for Tommy Hill. I think Nebraska comes away with 3 interceptions against Shedeur Sanders in this game. They get pressure. They force throws. The takeaways rain down upon the secondary. I like Nebraska to turn Colorado over several times on Saturday. And Shedeur Sanders didn't throw that many interceptions last year. And he only had 1 against North Dakota State. And quite frankly, that was as flukish of an interception as you're going to see. But these are legitimate. Nebraska comes away with 3 interceptions on Saturday. Brunts.
Death taxes and tight end oddly specific predictions. Thomas Fidone finally gets vertical on a route. Dylan Raiola finds him, and he scores from 12 yards out.
Okay. You got a 12-yard Thomas Fidone touchdown in which he runs north and south and not east and west. That is fairly specific. All right, Gary, what do you got?
I like your interceptions. I think Nebraska has a chance to force Colorado into some mistakes. I will say this. So Shedeur Sanders has only thrown 4 interceptions in 464 attempts since he's been at Colorado. He will throw an interception on the opening drive of the third quarter. And for the first time in his career, in the middle of the field, John Bullock makes an interception.
Ooh, all right. I like it. BC, what do you got for us?
Ja'Cory Barney is going to score a touchdown on it's going to count as a pass. It's going to be basically like a handoff where Raiola flips it 1 foot in front of him to Barney, who's coming across. He's going to zip through. Colorado is going to be a little bit surprised by it. He's just going to, I mean, that one catch he had where there was a penalty on the first drive, you saw the juice he has. And I think it's going to be a play like that where he gets a little space and he hits that crack and he's gone. 27 yards for a touchdown. My only other one is I think Nebraska, Colorado will beat Texas, Michigan in the TV ratings. And that seems like a bold thing kind of because it's Texas, Michigan. But if you think back to like Dion last year and Colorado State, Colorado, and the ratings those got, that I just think it's going to be interesting to see how those numbers come out at least.
All right. BC, you ready to make the score prediction?
35-27, Nebraska. I kind of feel bad giving that many points in this one to maybe both sides, but somehow, some way we find our way there, maybe a defensive score. But 35-27.
Gary.
For the 9th straight game, Tony White's defense holds an opponent under 24 points. Nebraska 34-21.
13 points. Got some confidence here, Brunts. Bring everybody down.
I'll go 30-27 Nebraska. I think Nebraska's defense is going to have to make a late stop. I don't know if it's going to be Freedom coming around the corner to pull the guy down as everybody goes crazy like it was back in 2016. But it feels like the defense is going to be up to the challenge. So 30-27 Nebraska.
All right. I am going 34-24, and Nebraska wins by 10. That's a cover for the degenerates out there. That line will be interesting by the time we get to kick off as well. That is all 4 of us predicting a Nebraska win here on Saturday. I'm not shocked, but I was wondering if someone was gonna go opposite. It's been a very positive week, which in recent history has not always been a harbinger of great things for Saturday.
How nice was Sunday? People were really nice wherever you went.
Matt Rule hopes people are very nice on Sunday. That is when he wants you to be nice. Saturday, not the nice day of the weekend. Sunday, the nice day. Hold the door open. Be polite. Carry groceries for an old lady. That's what you're doing on Sunday. Saturday, not so much.
Saturday, let that old lady get the door for herself.
Yep. She can carry her own bag of cat food to her car.
Yeah, hold on to these jugs of milk, Grandma.
All right. Gary, thank you for joining us, as always, here on the Husker247 HypeCast. Any final thoughts from you here?
Can I just point out how bad Nebraska was in the first half last year? Or is that allowed?
No, you can point that out. That's allowed.
Fumble, punt, miss field goal, fumble, interception, punt.
Those punts weren't good either.
No.
And they were in Colorado, which you might be familiar. The air allows the ball to travel further.
Yeah.
Yeah. There have been a lot of deflating moments in this series of late. Remember when Adrian Martinez threw it to Mo Washington, and he housed it, and everybody thought Nebraska's back. And then they had to play the second half and overtime.
I'm trying to remember if
Montez
you're
had something to say about that.
Is that specifically 2018 or 2019? Because I feel like that happened in both games.
2019.
Yeah. They didn't play overtime in 2018, right? Like that didn't go to overtime. They lost in regulation.
No.
Katie Cannon over DiCaprio Boodle.
LaVisca Chenault.
Was it LaVisca Chenault? Okay. Had my wrong Colorado receiver there. Yeah. This Nebraska could use some good feelings on Saturday. I think it's coming.
Just for my own research, the first Colorado player that comes to mind when I say Colorado, BC.
Darian Hagan, who was an option magician, sort of like Jamel Holloway from Oklahoma but I was like just a little young. I kind of knew the name, but Darian Hagan was right in my wheelhouse when college football was larger than life. And he would flip pitches out while his knee was basically on the ground, falling down to a running back, catching it. And, so I honestly liked him. Like, even though he was for Colorado, I enjoyed watching him.
Bieniemy. It's always Bieniemy. That's the answer. Bieniemy is the answer.
I watched a lot of the 1994 year in sports review video from Sports Illustrated that we had, and so I saw the Cordell Stewart, Michael Westbrook, I believe, Hail Mary probably about 1 billion times. So it's a tie between those two guys for me.
Mine would be Cordell Stewart. God, he was bad against Nebraska. Trev Alberts just ruined his career at Colorado when these two teams would play. I think he was he was 0-3, and he maybe was like 23 of 64 and didn't even throw over 300 yards in 3 starts. That's who I would think of.
Yeah. He was go back and watch. It's on YouTube. Watch the end of the 93 Nebraska Colorado game. CU has a chance to win it late. Stewart throws like the worst pick ever, and Trev Alberts is like patting him on nicely. He wasn't like doing it to be a jerk. I don't think it was like he felt so bad that he crapped the bed that he like gave him a nice little sportsman-like pat.
Now, so you're saying John Bullock is going to be patting Shedeur Sanders on the back as Tommy Hill houses an interception in the fourth quarter? Is that a new, oddly specific prediction from BC?
No, not for me, but you can claim that. That would be a good one.
Boy, can you imagine the reaction if something like that happened? Yeah. Whoever would pull that off for Nebraska, they wouldn't have to worry about buying a drink or getting a job in the state of Nebraska for the rest of their life.
I would love to see what O Street looks like when I'm driving home at 2 a.m. on Sunday, if that were to happen. So, maybe Brunson and I will make a little detour and just see what downtown looks like at 2 a.m.
Oh my God, there's Mike and Michael at Sandy's. Oh, that! Come on over, guys.
Get that Elk Creek water.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. It's been good as always. You can catch more of this great kind of preview content, if you will, at Husker247.com. We have plenty of content leading up to this Nebraska-Colorado game. There is going to be a lot of recruits on campus. We have that coverage as well at Husker247.com. Gary, thank you for joining us. For Michael Bruntz, Brian Christopherson, I'm Mike Shaver. We're Husker247. We'll catch you next time.